Okay, welcome to the Hockey News Anaheim Ducks show. My name is Patrick Present. I'm the co-editor, reporter, and writer for THN.com/Anaheim. Join, Joining me is my partner Derek. Derek, how we doing?
Doing all right. It's not too hot yet in the day, so feeling good. Ready to talk some Ducks hockey.
Yeah, we're definitely in the dog days after a busy couple of weeks leading up to free agency and the few days after that. Definitely cooled off a bit in terms of that news cycle. But why don't we start by going all the way back a month ago to the Chris Kreider acquisition. So on June 12th, the Ducks traded a third round pick in 2025 and Carey Terrance for Chris Kreider and a 2025 fourth round pick. Derek, what were your first reactions upon seeing this trade?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think it was like a couple days before it actually was official is when things kind of started coming out about Krider being a possibility for Anaheim. He has the no move clause, so there was some things that they kind of had to work on beforehand to make sure that he like Anaheim was some of that he wanted to go. And I think you look at the acquisition price for him, they paid very, very little for him. It's somebody that automatically just makes their forward group a little bit deeper. That's somebody I think that is going to be playing a crucial role in the top six. I mean, whether you like Chris Kreider or not, like that's the role that he's going to play on this team just because of what he provides and just the state of the excuse me, the Ducks forward group. So, and then just, looking at last season, it wasn't great for Kreider. It wasn't great for the Rangers as a whole. So, it's kind of hard to gauge what he's going to bring to the Ducks this upcoming season. But, he plays on the power play. He's a great net front presence. He can play on the penalty kill as well. I think that's somewhere that he's been really dangerous actually the last couple of years is being able to create shorthanded opportunities. That's something that the Ducks really struggled with, like their penalty kill and their power play. Uh, Pat Verbeek said that if they had been a little bit better, maybe they're in the hunt for the playoffs all the way to the end. So um, that was a great acquisition, I think, for the cost or the little cost that it came at. So yeah.
Well, yeah, if we remember back to, what was it, November when the Rangers sent out that email blast saying that Kreider and Trouba were available. Now they're both in Anaheim, but definitely this is a low risk, high reward kind of acquisition. I know Kreider is up there in age and he had a down year, still a down year with 22 goals, which is kind of impressive. And like you said, special teams special teams ace. I'm looking at his playoff numbers right now. It's pretty excellent. His last three playoff appearances, 12 goals in 16 games, 9 and 7, 16 and 20. Um, he dealt with a myriad of injuries last season, including a hand, a spout of vertigo, and something else, I think. Um, so, I mean, this was this made sense. I think he brings exactly what the Ducks are looking for. They had a lot of they tried to funnel pucks to the front of the net, kind of like the Carolina Hurricanes do, just from every angle, but they just weren't winning a lot of battles in front of the net. Now, hopefully, a lot of that stylistic tendencies change under Quenneville, but still, you're going to need a guy in front of the net that can bang home rebounds, establish body position, stuff like that. And Kreider is literally one of the best to ever do it. So, yeah, and the speed he brings, I think he's going to be a nice little fit here.
Yeah, I think the last thing was I when we spoke to him after the trade, I think he mentioned it was like back spasms or something like that.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to make the playoffs, which they are trying to do this year, bringing in someone with Kreider with that kind of experience for the playoffs is extremely helpful.
Absolutely. Unless you have anything else, we're going to move on.
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, um, someone we thought was going to benefit from the Chris Kreider acquisition ended up getting traded 2 weeks later, and that was Trevor Zegras, who had been in trade speculation for over a year and a half to this point. And, we're all finally put out of our misery when he was traded to the Philadelphia Flyers for forward Ryan Poehling, a 2025 second round pick, and a 2026 fourth round pick. Now, initial reactions and reactions since.
Well, it was weird because I woke up that morning and that was kind of like the first thing I saw on my phone. And I don't know why, like I woke up and I was like, sometimes like you just wake up naturally and it's like, oh, like I feel like something like I got to do something or something happened. And I guess that was kind of what happened that day. So definitely difficult to wrap my head around just because I think, just between us, especially, we kind of figured, oh, like this is it'd be great. Like Ziggress doesn't have to play under Greg Cronin anymore. Like this is kind of a new situation for him. Maybe it's like a change of scenery within the organization just because he gets to play under a coach that has had a lot of experience in the NHL. He's not playing under a rookie coach like Dallas Aikens or Greg Cronin anymore. And maybe he can kind of benefit from that. And then all of a sudden, especially too, because Chris Krider came in and him and Ziggress are really good friends. And then all of a sudden, he's not on the team anymore. And it kind of makes sense in a vacuum of why they did that. They brought in Ryan Poehling. He kind of fits the mold of what Verbeek wants the team to be like. And just because of the role that Zegras had over the last year or so, it's not really what he wanted. I think personally to do is kind of be a winger or maybe a little bit lower in the lineup. And he wanted to play center. And I think that's something that he's going to get in Philadelphia. And he's going to be able to play in a prominent role. And I think just the ability to stay healthy is going to be kind of the focal point for him just because of how many injuries he's dealt with over the last couple of years. But, in a nutshell, this deal makes sense for the Ducks and for the player just because it provides kind of better scenarios for each party involved.
Yeah, this one was an interesting one just because when it was in the morning and Elliot Friedman had said, "Oh, I'm hearing something about Trevor Zegras," and then an hour later he's traded. And I think we had all come to terms with that. Maybe Trevor Zegras wasn't in the long-term plans in Anaheim. I mean, every opportunity Pat Verbeek had to be like, "Nah, we're not shopping him." He didn't. It was always the consistent answer of, well, even Gretzky got traded. I don't know. We're always trying to do what's best for the team, and yeah, that makes sense. Um, I don't, I think the return could have been better personally. I think that if even if he wasn't in the long-term plans, playing half a season under Joel Quenneville, who was so good for players like Patrick Kane and Jonathan Huberdeau, I think could have boosted Zegras's return quite a bit. And even if he was never making it to training camp, I think the timing of the trade was odd because we were looking at it like, oh, they're saving a little bit of cap space. Not that they need it for free agency to start on July 1st. But between the Ziggress trade, the draft, and then when free agency started, a lot of centers were off the board. So a lot of the teams were left out in the cold who wanted a center, not getting one because of, Sam Bennett's re-signed, John Tavares re-signed, Brock Nelson did, so on and so forth. So even just holding on to Zegras a week and a half longer, I think could have boosted his return. But nonetheless, we're moving forward, and Zegras is going to be in a good spot in Philadelphia. I think he's going to be in the role he wants, and for a team that wants him. And then Ryan Poehling, like you said, is gonna fill a depth role that the Ducks need. He has some underrated offensive talent from what I've seen. He's a good skater. He's a really good defender. He's the first one over the boards on a PK. So again, boosting those special teams that were near the bottom of the league standings for the last couple of seasons is definitely going to help and definitely going to increase, I think, the team's floor as far as from a point standpoint in the standing. So, you know, I think with these two acquisitions, I think the Ducks are going to be better. Are going to be better than they were before. So, and then it's going to fit the mold of what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think going back to Zegras, even if like say you view him as a winger, there wasn't that many quality winger options available in free agency. Like you had Mitch Marner, you had Nikolai Ehlers, but guys like Brock Besser, they never made it to the market. They ended up re-signing with their teams. And I thought Besser re-signing with Vancouver is wild because I don't think like nobody or not many people thought that he was going back to Vancouver just because of everything that had been coming out of there. So, but yeah, it's just really, and we'll get to John Gibson here in a second, but just I think where I struggled with those two deals from the Ducks perspective is just kind of the timing of both deals. Both of them came right before free agency, and both of them came at a time when if teams strike out in free agency, those are kind of their fallback options. And you have the leverage, you have kind of the ability to maybe set the price or the market a little bit more because teams are desperate and they don't have other options to look at.
Exactly. I think, like I said, if you look around the league right now, so many teams are still looking for a boost in their top six, whether that be at the wing or center. And, Zegras would have filled that role, but, you know, good for him. He gets to go to Philadelphia and be with his friends, and I think it's going to be great for him, and it's going to be fun to watch the Flyers this year. If you don't have anything else, we're going to move on to the John Gibson trade.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so day two of the draft started with a bang when again Elliot Friedman reported that John Gibson had been traded to the Detroit Red Wings for Peter Morazzic, a 2027 second round pick, and a 2026 fourth round pick. So, kind of a similar return for Gibson there, who again had been in trade rumors and speculation for years now at this point. And it was something that, we had all kind of been expecting. But for me, again, the return was underwhelming. What were your first reactions there? Because you were at the draft, I believe, on day two.
Yeah, that was right before the Ducks were going to pick too, so it was kind of just really scrambling and just trying to figure out like what the deal was. Also, who the Ducks were looking at maybe taking it with that draft pick that they had just gotten a few days ago in the Ziggress deal. But it was kind of weird just because I think initially at the time I didn't really grasp like the gravity of like, oh, John Gibson's not an Anaheim Duck anymore. And so after like a couple, I think maybe like 5 or 6 days after, like being able to finally like process like, wow, this is truly the start of a new era, or I guess like the end of the old regime, if you want to put it that way, is because there's no more Cam Fowler, there's no more Ziggress, there's no more John Gibson. Like Jamie Drysdale got traded a couple seasons ago now, and you look at the roster, and most of it is now Pat Verbeek's roster. Like these are guys that Pat Verbeek brought in, whether it's their free agency, the draft, like Leo Carlson, or their trades like Jacob Trouba and now Chris Krider and Peter Morazzic. So, I mean, I think Mason McTavish is the only first round pick left from the Bob Murray era, which is kind of wild to think about just from that perspective, because now everything is just come through. Everything is from Verbeek. Um, but yeah, I mean, I didn't think that Detroit would really be an option for Gibson just because there's been so much talk about Carolina, so much talk about Edmonton. And I just didn't really see kind of where the pieces would fit in terms of a return. So getting Morazzic back, I mean, that's great. You get a serviceable backup for Lukas Dostal. Like you said, the draft pick return is kind of similar to what they got from Ziggress, and I think part of that for me just kind of goes back to the timing of the deal. Like, could you have gotten more if you had waited until after free agency? Possibly. I think, especially too with Gibson, I think there was a greater chance at a better return than Ziggress, at least because the market for goalies, like, there was just nobody out there in free agency. Like, there's Jake Allen, and then I couldn't even tell you who the next best option was, with all due respect to the free agent market for goalies. But and then it was interesting too, just because the day after Verbeek traded Gibson to the Red Wings, he re-signed Ville Husso. So I don't know if like you needed to get Mrazek. I mean, it's great for Dostal because he has someone who he's played with internationally behind him, and that's somebody that he's known for a really long time. But maybe you could have just had Ville Husso be the backup, and then you don't have to take back that much salary, or you can go in a couple different avenues. Maybe you don't have to make the Gibson trade right then and there. But yeah, just like the timing of the deals, I think, is more of the issue for me still than the actual return because we kind of figured that these guys were not going to be in the organization for maybe like beyond this year, I guess. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I think Morazzic is, I feel like maybe an insurance policy if Philly Husso, doesn't pan out because they signed Husso for an extra year. So they gave him the 2-year deal. Um, so they're ending up paying Morazzic and Husso more than they would have paid John Gibson for this upcoming season. But, they have his $6.4 million in its entirety off the books for next summer, should they actually spend it. Um, Yeah, again, the return is a little underwhelming considering how long and how hard of a line he Verbeek had drawn in the sand for John Gibson. Again, I think we had all come to grips with that. He was, not too long for the organization. But again, man, teams on the outside looking in who needed a goaltender or we think needed a goaltending upgrade were, Edmonton, like you said, Carolina, Philly still looking for a goaltender. Columbus is looking to take that next step and could use a boost in net. So yeah, the qualm isn't so much trading Gibson, even though bringing him back would not have been a bad option. They were probably the best goaltending tandem in the league last year. But the timing of this is also interesting because as we're going to get to later, Dostal is arbitration eligible in an RFA, so kind of lost a little bit of leverage there. But it kind of puts all your faith on Lukas Dostal, who has had 2 great seasons now in his first 2 NHL campaigns. So, and from what we know, is looking to solidify himself as a star, a true starter, and a star in this league. So, and I don't know about you, but I think he's ready and good enough to do so. But yeah, just the return is underwhelming and probably could have been boosted had again Verbeek waited until after free agency kind of shook out and made that trade maybe today on July 11th. But c'est la vie, and Morazzic again is like a good insulation piece, I guess, to Dostal, and a good he might be traded at the deadline if Husso actually plays well and earns that backup role. So I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out with those three. Do you have anything else to add with the goaltending situation?
yeah, you summed it up perfectly.
Yeah, thanks. Why don't we jump straight into free agency and then head back to the RFA? So let's go to on day 1 of free agency. After striking out a year ago on July 1st, 2024, in the afternoon, we had got word that Mikko Granlund was signed by the Ducks to a 3-year contract with an AAV of $7 million per year. The first year of his deal, he has a full no trade. The second year comes with a 15-team no trade list, and the third year comes with a 10-team no trade list. And I think we had talked about this as like a free agency preview, but I thought the Ducks really needed to solidify the bottom 6 down the middle because when you look at their center group, it was Carlson, Strome, I guess at the time Lundstrom and McTavish, and you're not comfortable putting any of those guys out in a matchup role against a top opposing line like you're going to face night in night out against McDavid and McKinnon and Eichel and all these powerhouse top lines that we have in the West here. So I thought the Mikko Granlund signing was pretty excellent. Only a 3-year term. The cap space isn't an issue. And, I know his numbers weren't great defensively, especially in San Jose, but I think that's more environment based, in my opinion. And I think he's ready to take on a lot of responsibilities defensively and, again, another penalty killer. So, what were your reactions here with Mikko Granlund?
Yeah, I thought the deal was terrific. Initially when before free agency, I kind of thought that he would be one of the guys that they would go after. I thought maybe he could be even like the marquee signing that they made, and of course that he is now. But just like the versatility he brings, he's obviously a very strong addition to the top 6. But the fact that he can play both center and wing, I think that's something that is really valuable to the team. You can plug him in at center, you can put him up and down, however many spots you want to do, or you can put him on the wing. Like you can, like we saw this a lot last year. Greg Cronin would put Lundstrom with Carlson kind of as like the pseudo center, or even with when he played with Ziggress, like Leo and Ziggress played together, kind of as that pseudo center to kind of supplement those like defensive responsibilities or like faceoffs that Leo had kind of struggled with throughout the season. So I could see Granlund and Carlson kind of playing off each other. I think having Cutter with Leo, I think you kind of have to have that together. Like they were just so dynamite down the stretch in the second half of the season. I'm not sure what you do with Alex Killorn because I think, despite what a lot of people say, Alex Killorn is a very capable player. He's a very valuable contributor to the team. Maybe he doesn't have that high level of skill anymore that guys like Leo and Cutter have, but he was a really good addition to that line. So I'm not sure where he's gonna kind of fit in all of this, but I think if you have a top six of Gauthier, Carlson, Granlund, and Krider, McTavish, Terry, I think that's a way stronger group than they had last year in the top six. So that alone, like Mikhail Granlund, I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing where they put him in the lineup just because I feel like there's so many possibilities that having him on the team opens up. And then also just having Ryan Poehling too, because that might be perhaps the strongest bottom six center that they've had in quite a while. Like, I mean, it's really interesting the way they've kind of constructed the team now, just because you would assume that Carlson and McTavish are going to be the number one and two center, and Verbeek had kind of talked about this a little bit after the draft because they drafted Roger McQueen, and he was saying how, well, we have Leo and we have Mason, and McQueen's going to bring up something a little bit different than those two. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how Granlund's deployed. I think they definitely do see him as a center just because Verbeek had kind of mentioned that, oh, well, Granlund's great at faceoffs. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like if they're playing those three guys down the middle and what the wings kind of look like.
Yeah, I think like you said, the versatility is the name of the game with this guy, and he's he's just a really smart player and can kind of adapt. And I like the pseudo center angle just because like sometimes with the flow of the game, players are going to end up with center responsibilities just because they're the first ones back into the zone. So, I mean, back-to-back 60-point seasons for this guy. Really smart playmaker. He's strong for only being 5'10". Um, yeah, maybe foot speed is a bit of an issue, but I'm not so sure. It's just he just thinks so quickly that I'm not so sure about that. But yeah, Finnish international player. I think, this was the marquee signing and one that had a ringing endorsement from me.
Yeah, I think like his pedigree too. He's played at the Olympics, he's played at the World Championships. He has so much international experience. He's worn a letter with so many different organizations. Like this is the kind of guy you bring in if you want to make a push for the playoffs. Like he just has so many things that you want in a player, and so that's why I just like just talking about. I'm getting like so excited about like seeing him be part of this organization.
Yeah, I think that's what that might have been one of the better free agent signings of the whole window. Unless you have anything else to add, we can move on.
No, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I like that one. Okay, well, we were at a day before Granlund had signed, I believe. Sorry, let me start over. Um, so we had learned that a handful of players were qualified, given qualifying offers, pending restricted free agents, two of whom were Lukas Dostal and Drew Hellison, who we later learned had filed for our salary arbitration. Um, so those can be because the player filed, that means the team can choose whether it's 1 or 2 years if they make it that far, but they can have negotiations in the meantime. What do you kind of take? What's your take on the salary arbitration and how it's playing out with the Ducks and these two players?
Well, when we spoke to Verbeek after the Granlund signing, he had kind of alluded to that a little bit with Dostal, where he said, well, he might file for arbitration just to protect himself, and that takes offer sheets off the table. So I think that's kind of a great thing for the Ducks is not having to think about that possibility. But it also puts a little bit of pressure on them as well, because Dostal obviously wants a long-term deal. You look at they just traded Gibson away, so it's kind of a sign like, okay, this is going to be yours to take, and we're going to give you every opportunity to do so. And at the same time, like you kind of lost a little bit of leverage by doing that before you got a long-term deal done with Dostal. So now it's just a matter of, are you going to do a 1 year or a 2 year deal if you get to arbitration? And you can't do a 2 year deal because that walks him straight to unrestricted free agency. So I mean, obviously, the thing is there's time to get a deal done before arbitration. Like just because he filed for arbitration doesn't mean that they're locked in and now he's only going to be able to get 1 year or a 2 year deal. So I just want to put that out there. But um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much, like I think there's at least like 2 or 3 more weeks before um, they even get to the point where an arbitration case is a possibility. So um, it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go because Verbika said like he likes doing bridge deals, but Dostal's also already gotten a bridge deal before. Um, and also, I can kind of see it from the perspective of the Ducks is, goaltending. Sometimes it's very voodoo, and some guy can be great
Hmm.
1 year and then the next year he's not. But you look at John Gibson, and like Gibson was great for a very long stretch up until the organization as a whole kind of just got not great. But I think we've seen that Dostal has the ability to do that, is carry the team on his back, and he's already doing it at such a young age in terms of like goaltender progression because he's what I think 25, and being able to do what he's done in the short time that he's been in the NHL. It kind of makes sense to invest in him that way, especially because if you do this year, and then next year you go to arbitration again, it's like you're doing the same thing all over again, and that can get a little bit of tiresome from the player side. Is if the organization shows that they trust in you and that they think that you're capable of being that long-term piece, that makes them feel good. That makes them feel like, okay, nice, like I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can just go out there and play hockey. And then from the Helson perspective, I think it's just kind of about trying to get a little bit more, right? Like he gets his qualifying offer, but he also played a really big role for the Ducks down the stretch as a rookie. Like he comes up, and granted, maybe he won't be deployed the same as the way that Cronin deployed him, but he comes up from the AHL, and almost immediately he's kind of like just this fixture in the lineup as kind of the bottom pairing. And so I think that's just about getting a little bit more security or a little bit more financial security. I'm not really sure like what the outlook would be for him because going into next season it's going to be Gudis and Truba, and then him and Luno battling it out for that last spot on the right hand side. So um, that one I have no clue about really, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I think avoiding arbitration would be ideal in both cases. Obviously, I think two players have filed for arbitration since Verbeek has taken over, and this is his fourth summer as the general manager of the Ducks. First was Isaac Lundestrom, I think, in 2022, and they had settled a couple of days before the hearing to a multi-year deal. And then the second and most infamous one, I guess, would be Troy Terry's, who they took down to the wire, and I guess we're about to enter the arbitration meeting itself when they had settled on their seven by seven deal. So that's, I think, like that's playing hardball on both sides and kind of scary because everyone knows that these arbitration meetings are just it's tearing the other party down as much as you can just so you can get as much as you can on your side, which makes sense, but it's kind of brutal and kind of it has the potential to sour relationships, I guess. Um, so avoiding that is key, like you said. And Dostal, yeah, a bridge deal is not a thing because he's not coming off his ELC. So I guess a bridge would be 1 year, but again, you're just in the same situation next summer. I think it's in both parties' best interest to go long term here. And we kind of have a decent outlook on what that would look like based on other, goaltending signings of late. It's going to be anywhere 4 to 5 years probably, maybe 6, and in the like 5 to 6.5 range, I guess, maybe somewhere around there. I wouldn't be surprised, but and then yeah, Hellison, like you said, probably some security, just because he is fighting for a spot now. Um, he was a stabilizing force when they needed one on the right side. He's earned like he grabbed that spot and didn't look back. He's a very solid defenseman. Yeah, I mean he's got a while till he's going to be a UFA. I think that's going to be the summer of 28. So that'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. But I would expect a 1 or 2 year deal at well probably over league min now, maybe in the one to 1.5 range. But yeah, good for Hellison. He earned his spot.
Yeah, and arbitration is a nasty process. I know when Jeremy Swayman went through that with the Bruins before he signed his extension, I feel like, they have the same process in baseball and the MLB, and it's just not a fun time for anybody because it's just like, hey, look at how bad this guy is, and but we want to keep him, but like look how bad he is because we want to pay him less than he probably deserves. So I can't remember if it was like either speaking to Troy or something, but I vaguely remember him saying that they were literally sitting outside the room for where the arbitration hearing was going to be, and that's when the deal got done. So talk about like cooking in the pressure cooker, like just being right outside, getting ready to kind of get mud thrown in your face, and then we got a deal done. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't get to that point for either of those guys, and they're able to get deals worked out long before that's even a possibility.
Yeah, and meetings haven't been scheduled as far as I'm aware yet, but if they were to be scheduled, it would be between July 20th and August 4th, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, there's still about a week and a half until those start. So it might be some nervous times here. So because we don't want to enter that room. All right. And then one more player who is an RFA but does not have arbitration rights and is considered a core piece of the organization moving forward is Mason McTavish, who is kind of in a similar situation that, famously Ziggress and Drysdale were in 2 summers ago, coming off of his ELC in a 50-point season, I think, but was on pace for 60 had he not been hurt. Um, what's your take right now on where his contract sits?
I don't know. This is a tough one for me to read because we saw what Matthew Nyes got from the Leafs. I think it was like 6 years at like 7.25, something like that. And I thought, okay, that could be kind of the range where I could see McTavish getting. It was kind of similar to Troy Terry. When I was looking at comparables for him, is like Tage Thompson and Jordan Kyrou at the time kind of had similar deals, and that's kind of where Terry ended up too. So especially just because McTavish has the better track rate than Nyes, and he plays a more premier position because he's a center. And you look at the deal that Matt Coronado got a couple, or I think it was like a month or so now
Hmm.
ago. It's pretty similar too, and he also has a better track record than Coronado. Also plays center, whereas Coronado and Nyes are both wingers. So um, I thought, okay, like that's something that he could get. And then the Sharks come out and they give William Eklund a bridge deal, and that kind of surprised me. I was like, oh, okay. I thought maybe that he would get a little bit longer term, a little bit more security. And then Eklund said that he liked that they kind of got that deal done early in the summer, so he can just not have to worry about it, and it shows like they're committed to him. And so, obviously, like offer sheets have been kind of like the talk of the town just because of how the Blues utilized them last year. I think in the back of my head, there's a little bit of like maybe like that's a possibility, but it would have to be one heck of an offer sheet for the Ducks to even consider like not matching it, just because they have so much cap space. They've committed to McTavish being the number 2 center behind Carlson now because they traded away Ziggress. Like Roger McQueen is not going to be in the NHL this year, and he's not going to be like pushing McTavish for that second line center role. I don't think anybody on the team right now that's currently on the team is going to be pushing McTavish for that, except maybe Mikko Granlund. And we have yet to see kind of where that's going to shape out. So, um, I think as long as there's no offer sheet that comes like their way, the Ducks can kind of take their time. I don't know like what the holdup in the negotiations is, like what like who wants what, like where the disparity is. Um, but I think the thing is you just don't want this to take too long, like Ziggress and Dresden. I think that's the only issue I would have is the longer that it kind of drags out is okay. Now there's a little bit of doubt starting to creep in, like what's going on. But maybe they get something done like today, and then we're like this all irrelevant. But yeah, that's kind of how I see things.
Yeah, the offer sheet thing, while fun to talk about, I just don't think is relevant here or with the players of McTavish's caliber. Last year it worked because the Oilers were up against the salary cap ceiling, and they, couldn't afford to keep those guys. And the Ducks are definitely not in that situation. I know Verbeek does not like long-term deals coming off of ELCs. He has said so in the past. So I'm expecting a 3-year deal, kind of probably the Trevor Zegras deal, to be honest with you. Although, I'd be pleasantly surprised if it went longer than that, if it was a long-term deal, like closer to Matthew Nyes or Matty Beniers, who is, I think, closer to a 7x7. I think that would probably be in the best interest just because the cap is going to continuously go up and that contract's going to look better and better. But Verbeek likes his guys to earn it, as we've heard and as he said. So, yeah, like you said, this can't go into training camp though again because again, it's going to be a training camp with a brand new coach, just like Zegras and Drysdale had, and both those guys got hurt during training camp. So we don't want Mason McTavish playing catch up in mid-September, late September, into his first training camp under Quenneville. And yeah, again, like you said, lost a bit of leverage with the Seagrass shipping out. So um, it'll be interesting, but I'm expecting like a 3x6, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
I think just like like everything you said, it's just you got to make sure that you show like the guys that they're valued, and obviously there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes, but just having like those pieces locked down before training camp is just really important for all of that. Or
yeah,
sorry, the part that I actually wanted to talk about is yeah, Beniers is a great comparable, and I think that's a little bit better than Nyes and Coronado just because they play the same position.
yeah, I think yeah, that's your benchmark, and that's what I'm going to Verbeek with if I'm McTavish's camp. I'm saying, hey, McTavish has outproduced Beniers, to this point in their careers, and he got this, so my guy deserves this, and that's how its negotiations go. So it'll be interesting to monitor. But yeah, the sooner the better, I think. And then whatever trade rumors are popping up about McTavish, like we can just put
Oh,
those to bed if it's very annoying. But we can never put anything off the table right now. So just the quicker that gets nipped in the bud, the better it'll be for us personally. But you know, say la vie. We're gonna take a break here, and then we'll return with a little draft recap and development camp takeaways, and then maybe a preview for the rest of the off season. So we'll be right back.